Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this wonderful mental health panel. I am so excited to be here and have the privilege of moderating. My name is Maya McCovery. I attend Pace University, and I attend Pace University, and I reside in the United States. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, fellows. I'm so excited that we have this time to communicate and also hear from our panelists. So please take the time to do so and introduce yourselves. This topic is so important to me as a Millennium Fellow who specifically did their project on mental health and their intersections with politics and just the feelings that we have as young people. And I have the honor of introducing these amazingly dedicated mental health advocates. So, first, Diana Chow is a first generation Bowie Chinese American immigrant from Southern California. Diana founded Letters to Strangers when she was a sophomore in high school after bipolar disorder and a blinding eye condition nearly ended her life. Using the letters to heal, she discovered that writing is humanity distilled into ink. Today, Letters to Strangers is the largest global youth for youth mental health nonprofit, impacting over 35,000 people annually on 6 continents and publishing the world's first youth for youth mental health guidebook for free. Next, Amisha Rashad is a counselor psychologist and mentor specializing in peace building and trauma healing, centering her work on trauma-informed resilience for community building, aiming at reducing conflict and violence in her community. Amisha is the founder and executive director of Vinishi, a foundation which focuses on community-based mental health innovation, intervention, and approaches. She is named among 100 most influential young African and Kenyan representatives at the 2021 Origin Global Fellowship for Young Mental Health Advocates. Amazing. So next we have Dr. Susan Calvert, became the founder and executive director of a 501 nonprofit, the Foundation of Family and Community Healing. She has published almost 100 journals, articles, books, and chapters, and has written hundreds of blogs for Psychology Today, Brains Magazine, the Silver Lining blog, and through FFCH. Dr. Calvert is a radio host and a consultant with a passion for helping individuals and organizations find their purpose and their calling and the highest version of themselves. Amazing. Okay. And then we have Ali Fisher, is a convertant for communications of the Foundation for Family and Community Healing, a nonprofit focused on healthy relationships with self, community, earth, and loving the force that unites us, believing in the importance of bringing our whole selves with where we go. She values the mission and the culture of FCH and its intentions to deepen our understanding of connection to each other. Ali graduated from Madison University in 2019, having double majored in economics and French, and is currently attending Matesville Modber Theological School, studying to be a Unitarian Universalist minister, hoping to explore life's big questions along many. So many amazing and talented people here today. I wanted to intro our keynotes by quoting this amazing quote that kind of encapsulates what we're doing today. There can be no sustainable development without the sustainable development of self. It's such a powerful quote and really kicks off our panelists today. So let's start off with opening remarks. Ali, if you can start with us, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Hi there, fellows. I am happy to be here with all of you and thankful to UN Academic Impact and MCN for the opportunity. I think I can relate to the position that you're in as university students looking into the future with excitement and maybe some fear, uncertainty, and imposter syndrome. I know I experienced that regarding where and how you'll make an impact. My name is Ellie Fisher, and I am the convener for communications, working alongside Susanna at the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. My work at the foundation was born from a rock bottom moment. I am one of the many people who switched directions during the pandemic. I'll get into all that, but I'll first provide a little bit more context. So, as Maya said, I went to James Madison University and I studied economics and French and graduated in 2019. Initially, I had every intention of doing economic development work in French speaking Africa. That is, until I studied abroad in Cameroon this spring of my junior year of college. I realized how incredibly challenging it is to do meaningful work in a context and in a culture that you're not familiar with. I knew it would probably require decades of listening and learning before I could contribute. And frankly, I did not want to cause more harm than good by my lack of depth of knowledge. My time in Cameroon is still one of the experiences that I cherish most in my life. And it led to a pivotal moment when I decided not to do my life's work abroad. It felt like the worst possible time to change my whole career trajectory. That time going into senior year when it felt like everyone else had jobs lined up and their futures laid out before them. But that terrifying moment is also the reason why I'm here today. I ended up in a fundraising role in Virginia. It was good work, but I felt like I had to focus more on the needs and desires of our donors than on the needs of the people that we were serving. As I was grappling with that in 2020, I had some major health issues like Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases, and then lockdown began. As an already anxious person, my anxiety was going through the roof. The very physical kind, the heart pounding, can't sleep, sweaty palms, mental gymnastics kind of anxiety. Plus, I had hardly any energy. I wasn't able to see friends and I lived alone. So, things that would usually make me happy, like spending time with the people I care about, volunteering, and group organizations that I was a part of, were kind of off limits and felt impossible. I barely had energy to get out of bed, work, and feed myself and my cats. This rock bottom moment led to a moment of wisdom that came from me living in survival mode for months. I was spending a lot of my time in tears. I had to decide where I felt glimmers of joy so that I could place my energy there. This looked like time in nature, meditation and contemplation, journaling, Zoom calls and phone calls with loved ones and people important to me, and lots of sleep. And then one day I got the phone call. Someone told me about an organization that was hiring and that their mission is to empower us all to create healthy, positive, rewarding relationships with self, others, and the loving force that connects us. They said they thought it would be perfect for me, and this was someone that I had only met a handful of times. Is that not exactly what I had realized was important to me and the way in which I had decided that I wanted to spend my time? It felt like I might have been manifesting. It felt like living the expression where attention goes, energy flows. Now I have a job that I absolutely love. And you know what? I still have anxiety. I still see a therapist and I'm deciding if medication is right for me. I still go through periods where I'm trying to do too much. And although my health is better, I still get tired and feel like I've expended what I have to give. The difference is I know how to fill myself up better than I used to. And I have actionable steps that I can take when I feel myself spiraling. Beyond that, I am so grateful to be in a work environment where I'm encouraged to take care of myself, to show up as my full self, and where we have tools at our disposal. Not only do we offer our online educational modules to others, we use them ourselves. I've gone through both our navigating anxiety and relationship well-being modules in small groups with others. Being vulnerable, having accountability buddies, knowing that I'm not alone, and recognizing my own progress while being affirmed by others, it's really life-changing. We have a name your own tuition model because we value accessibility. If you or your community would benefit from our resources, please use them. As people going into roles that will involve serving others at the forefront, it is so important to have healthy habits and also to advocate for yourself. It's easy for me to feel like I have to take on the whole world, and I imagine that many of you might feel that way too. Let this be a reminder that you definitely don't need to do that. And as my dad always reminds me, you can't change the world if you don't take care of yourself first. Thank you.
Allie, that was amazing and super like on note and touching, especially when you said where attention goes, energy flows. It's something that I consistently remind myself when I'm anxious or when I'm overwhelmed, when I feel like I don't belong in a certain place, when I feel imposter syndrome. It's something that is so important for us as young people that we can relate to in our lives. So I thank you so much. So next, can I have Diana for her keynote?
So hi everyone, I'm Diana Chow. I'm the founder and executive director at Letters to Strangers, the largest global youth for youth mental health nonprofit. As you heard in my bio, I started this organization when I was about 14 years old. At the time, it was just a student club. I had no vision of it becoming anything ever like even a little bit bigger. But my whole thought process behind it was just that I had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then I ended up going blind due to an eye disease that later on we discovered was actually psychosomatic, aka a physical manifestation of psychological distress. And it turns out that psychosomatic symptoms are particularly likely to affect people coming from cultures that have that extra strong stigma where you're emphasizing the mind-body connection, and there's shame that you're bringing onto the whole community when you are otherwise dealing with mental health problems. So we tend to see this a lot more reflected in non-white populations. And so after all of that, I ended up attempting suicide where my little brother was the one who found me. So due to my family situation, I emigrated to the US when I was about 9 from a rural village in the poorest province of China. My family was growing up beneath the poverty line here, and my parents did not speak English. With all of these, facets, and the fact that I was from a background where the source of a lot of the trauma that led to my mental illness was within the very environment that I was growing up in. I ended up becoming my brother's legal guardian. So I went to all his parent-teacher conferences. I basically became his parent, despite the fact that we only have a 4-year difference between us. So when he was the one who found me, that really made me realize that even though I was at a point where I did not care what happened to me, I at the very least cared what happened to him. And so I needed to start to heal. And that's why I tried a lot of different healing methods, but you might have heard about, if you're not from the US, you might have heard some things about how complicated the system here for healthcare can be to navigate. So I ended up turning to writing, and I wrote letters to strangers, to these people who I realized I was being so kind and empathetic to, yet why couldn't I give that same empathy for myself? Didn't I deserve the same for myself? I started to ask myself these questions, and as I wrote these letters, I adopted this personal motto of writing is humanity distilled into ink. And so that's how Letters to Strangers came about. And over the years, I think, especially when I first founded it, there were very few, if really any, youth for youth mental health organizations out there, especially ones that were run by people who looked like me. And so I think that's what really connected with a lot of people and led to them wanting to join us once they heard about what we were doing. So that's how over the years Letters to Strangers became what it is today. We are currently a registered charity in 6 countries around the world and active in over 20 more. We work through 3 main pathways, including, of course, our namesake letter writing program, which happens with student chapters or partners in the community across all these different countries. And there's also a public platform that anyone can use for exchanging letters. The second thing we do is our science-based peer education. So that includes the world's first youth for youth mental health guidebook that was mentioned earlier in my bio, written entirely by 14 to 21-year-olds and almost 500 pages long. It's very long, I'm sorry, but it's a lot of information and it's fully illustrated. Of course, also science and also grassroots policy-based advocacy. So our Liberia team runs the first toll-free Pan-African mental health hotline. It's available 24/7 to people in Liberia, and in that whole region, it's available at the short code 9898. But you can also call the long form code with the country code in it, and it'll still be toll-free for you from anywhere across Africa. So that's some of the work we do, how we got there, and I'm excited to be part of this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Diana. I think your story is so poignant, but also extremely inspiring to especially me as a young person and a third generation immigrant. Just hearing your ability to use young people in such an amazing way that I don't think many young people feel like they have the power and the ability to do. So I thank you for that so much. Next, Dr. Calvert, if you can do your keynote. So excited.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to the UN Academic Impact and MCN for this incredible program and the invitation to be here. And congrats to all you fellows for making it through this competitive process and your ongoing commitment to leading with your highest values. It takes so much courage for you to do so. And I'm really honored to be here to share my challenges that led to my life lessons, which created my personal and professional focus and offerings. So I'm kind of like Diana. My ancestors, my parents came from China, and I was born here in the U.S. And my culture very much influenced my life. I went the academic route and ended up teaching pharmaceutical sciences at Virginia Commonwealth University for 23 years. And I also was the director of our graduate program for 11 of them. But it wasn't a smooth path, because when I got tenure in around year 7, I got everything a Chinese American woman would ever dream of. But in the moment, it actually felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, because I realized I was chasing someone else's dream. And you would have looked at me and saw me as successful and, had my act together. But underneath, I was a wreck and deeply unhappy. And perhaps like you, I had low confidence. I suffered from perfectionism and terrible health issues, psychosomatic also, to the point of being incapacitated with chronic pain and fatigue. And I learned through this process, as I remade my life, that if I don't listen to my heart, then my heart wouldn't necessarily be on board with the choices from my head. And it seems sort of, obvious, but it wasn't what I was doing. I was living my life from what I thought instead of how I felt, which is much more important. So I made some major changes in my life. I gave up tenure. I eventually went back to school to get a degree in the science of well-being and several coaching credentials, because this is where my passion was. And I found my dream job supporting faculty success and well-being at the University of Georgia. And it was blissful until 2018, just 18 months into it, when I lost my sister and beloved husband to cancer. So after 3 years of being there at UGA, I gave it all up and moved back to Virginia, where I am now, to start the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. We're addressing the challenges that I saw in the world. This was pre-pandemic, and they've only gotten worse since then, including depression, anxiety, loneliness, conflict, and hopelessness. Because I just knew that schools and workplaces don't teach us these life skills. They don't teach us how to manage them or prevent them. So we walk learners step by step through what I consider to be these foundational skills for our ability to deeply thrive at all levels. And so my story is not about mistakes or setbacks. My story is about harvesting the learning and wisdom from our journey and paying it forward in some way to others. And maybe that's your journey as well. That's why I'm here. Maybe and that's why you're here, to turn our challenges and gifts into gifts for the world. That to me is leadership. So I want to just give you a couple of words of advice, but remember to ask you to remember one thing. So remember that the bigger the challenge, the bigger the gift, which is available in the form of growth that is available to you. It requires that you do that inner work that turns you from being a casualty of a situation into the phoenix that rises above it. So the two pieces of advice I'd like to give to you is first to commit to the learning and growth that enables you to surmount challenge. So failure and setback are really just, they're here to show you where you ought to be studying. And, some of that might be the usual academic or professional work, but the hardest parts of that so-called studying are not those things. They are the inner work. And the biggest one might be just to be present. Watch your emotions or the situation as it changes. Accept, or you do and do not have control. Sometimes just watching, waiting, or listening is the bravest and wisest course, and also the hardest thing to do. This is inner work too, big time. Second, you can best do this work by committing to a mindfulness practice that helps you to identify and challenge your judgy negative thoughts, which are completely normal, and to discover your inner truth. You can only do that by being present. So first, the judgy negative thoughts. By being mindful, you can notice them and challenge them and their validity. And then you can choose a healthier perspective. And those negative, judgy thoughts are probably at the root of many of your challenges. A lot of them are in your head. And know that those thoughts in your mind, that there might be a grain of truth to them, but also know there's a lot of garbage. And so it takes wisdom to know which is truth and which is garbage, and to do so without being judgmental of yourself, others, or even the situations. Because I feel like pretty much all of us have good intentions, even though that might be hard to see sometimes in others, and that every situation has both a downside and a silver lining. So knowing that they're both there, but work towards the silver lining. Also, while you're being mindful, challenge polarity thinking. So this is the idea that there's just two ways to view something, whereas in fact, the truth and the solution is usually probably in the middle. It's tempting to just go to either end because extreme perspectives are easy. You don't have to think about them. But it takes wisdom and an ability to discern, to find the place in the middle that's of the highest service to all. So being mindful allows you to get beneath that garbage to your inner truth. And when you do that, your inner truth can replace that judgy negative thinking. You let your thoughts float by, and then you can listen to what's underneath. There is your heart and your inner wisdom, and that will guide you through your most important decisions, and even in your smaller decisions, they can matter too. And if you're in doubt about whether to go with your head or your heart, go with your heart. This is where your deepest wisdom lies. So I just want to remind you that commitment means making it a daily priority. And this really matters. This work really matters because your perspective determines the nature of your world. And so you want to make sure your perspective is healthy and balanced and reflects your inner truth. The Foundation for Family and Community Healing can help you develop these healthier perspectives that can change your life. And my deepest hope is that by sharing our hard-earned wisdom through our platform, it'll make the path easier for others like you and those around you. So just remember that those big challenges lead to big growth that leaders can use to pay it forward, and to commit to a daily practice of learning and growth and practicing mindfulness so that you can find your inner truth and replace it with that judgy stuff and polarity thinking. And remember to follow your heart, because that'll be your guide to your happiness, and make that and your deepest passions for the world be your primary tools to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Calvert, so much. I think the note about mindfulness is so important. I think we become so soaked up in our thoughts and not being in the present moment and not being mindful of who we are and that we're people and that we're flesh and that there are humanly limitations. That doesn't mean that we're not amazing people and amazing fellows, but we can take breaks. And I thank you for that note and appreciation. So I am so grateful to introduce Amisa also as another keynote.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amisa. I'm sorry, I won't be able to put my camera on because of the network bandwidth, but I'm so glad to be here once more again. I remember I was invited around August when Millennium, we were launching the 22 fellowship and was among the guest speakers. So I'm usually excited whenever it's anything Millennium Fellows related. And actually just to affirm some of the fellows who personally reached out, because I know of Shamsuddin in Nigeria who reached out for me to and organized a very beautiful mental health session that I was the speaker, and it was such an interactive session. So kudos to all the Millennium Fellows doing amazing work outside there. We see you, we hear you, we're supporting you and rooting for you. So my name is Amisa Rashid. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I run Nivishe Foundation. So Nivishe Foundation focuses on building community resilience using community-based mental health interventions, innovations, and approaches. So our main forte is basically bringing in the intersectionality between the conventional Western approach of mental health and the community-based mental approach. So it is more of learning how a community has been surviving before, their best approaches, and learning from them in matters mental health, and bringing in the nexus of what is outside there in terms of theory, research, sciences around mental health to bring in the work together. So at Nivishe Foundation, we work through several programs. I'm a counseling psychologist myself, so mental health is very passionate. It's something that I champion for, I advocate for, and it's literally something that I breathe in and out. So with Nivishe Foundation, we just focus around 4 pillars. The first pillar is creating mental health awareness, and that is using community radio stations, whereby we simplify mental health concepts so much so that the local person at the grassroots level can be able to understand mental health concepts. We also have community interactions, whereby we interact with our community and learn from them, the community outreaches when it comes to mental health. The third way is having animations, which we are currently working on, having animations and illustrations around mental health, but using local languages so that kids can start understanding it at a younger age. And then the second pillar, we work with the mental health innovations, community-based mental health innovations, whereby we actually have our psychosocial disability programs. Our counselors are trained to offer counseling services in the Kenyan Sign Language, so it's easier for them to understand, and it's just a very accessible, easy process for people who are deaf or who have hearing challenges. We have mental health clubs where we partner with several schools around, and just with an amazing curriculum that targets the teachers, the students, the school admin, and the parents. So we have partnered with several schools who are really engaging in our mental health clubs. It's just the idea of bringing in kids and young people to start understanding mental health from a younger space, so that even if they're growing up, they know that mental health is important and know how to take care of it. And we also have mental health fellowship in Kenya. So we are launching the second phase of the fellowship in January. So if you're a Kenyan and here in the call and you're interested in joining our mental health fellowship, because it's localized to the Kenyan concept in understanding what mental health is at the country level. And then our third phase is we do researches, and they are part of our innovations. And our latest partners are the Aga Khan University here in Kenya, their Brain and Mind Institute. So we are looking into how we can be able to monitor and evaluate our work, how we can be able to come out with different ways in which we can do mental health work, not only at the community level, but use global methods to bring it to the local level. So that is in a nutshell what Nivishe does. We have a lot of programs, we work with a lot of people, and mental health is our champion, what we are championing for. And yeah, so that is in a nutshell what I do. And I'm so glad to be here once again. And also a shout out to to Diana Chow, Letters of Strangers, because she's doing an amazing work and she is in Kenya. And I know, like, I'm working with her in bringing letters to strangers in Kenya. So big up, Diana. Yes. So yeah.
Thank you for all that you do. Yeah, we should definitely chat. I almost said chat.
No, yes, thank you so much, you guys. Also, Misa, really emphasizing the point of that the things that we do here in the Millennium Fellowship is global. Like, we are a global organization. We connect with people globally, and mental health is not just one country or one place that kind of funnels in information. That the way we can experience mental health and go about mental health can be very different and very vast, but all like amazing and touches all of us. So I thank you. So I'm going to transition ourselves into the Q&A portion for the Millennium Fellows. I'm going to ask the fellows some questions, and then while I'm doing that, fellows, think of some questions, because I'm going to have you guys personally ask, intro yourself. And yes, we have these amazing panelists, and I'm super, super excited. So my first question for all panelists is, what got you guys into mental health advocacy? Like, what pulled you? What was the thing that was like, I want to be here, I want to do this? And what drives you currently? Is it the same thing? Is it the same thing that got you here so many a couple of years ago? Or is it really a difference? It's much different than what it was then to now. So I'd love to know.
I'll speak to that. I think for a lot of us, I heard that we had similar stories, that we had our struggles with mental health at various levels and places and ways. And I just feel like it's the human, it's the invitation to each of us in humanity to surmount our challenges and to find the gift in it. And that a part of our journey is to return the gift from our challenges and our journey. So I touched upon that briefly, but that theme is really pervasive across the stories of humanity, time, and culture. Joseph Campbell calls it the hero's journey. I call it the shero's journey. And what I hear in each of the stories is a similarity that we're living our journey.
Yeah, I mean, very, very much, I mentioned it already a little bit in my introduction of my own personal journey, which I think so many of us find as the initial reason why we get into advocacy work. But very quickly, I think a lot of us have, like, I know I certainly did, have like a rude awakening where sometimes it just feels like you're slugging through for a very long time and you're not sure where things will go. And I think in those moments, a big part of it is a lot of times the overall culture surrounding advocacy work can be a little bit of a you versus them sort of dialogue, where it frames the person doing the advocacy as someone who is doing it, for people who are not doing it, basically. Like, it's a fine line between helping someone because you empathize with them and you want to lift them to a better place the way that others did for you, versus accidentally, well-intentioned, but accidentally going into a situation where you end up being a little bit of a knight in shining armor, which is not what most people need. Respecting people's autonomy, individuality, and humanity is, I think, at the key here. So I think where that burnout happens a lot is we almost have this vision of sorts of ourselves in that knight in shining armor sort of result, where we are able to charge forward and get rid of like all of these problems, which is a wonderful vision to have in terms of getting rid of the problems, but it's not a realistic one in terms of recognizing and honoring each person's individuality. And so knowing that, once I really internalize that and try to separate it myself from that dialogue, I think it helped to overcome those moments where you start to feel like you're slugging along and things are not going where you want them to go, because ultimately it's not about you, it's about the community.
Yeah, I can add some thoughts as well. I think that pretty much everyone is struggling, and we go through so much of our lives not acknowledging that. And that to me, I've never been one for small talk. I've never been one to not show up and be myself. And I think that by leading or trying to lead with vulnerability, it can encourage others to be vulnerable as well. And the idea that we need to talk about mental health, we need to talk about, I mean, with Susanna and me, the work that we do is surrounding healthy relationships with the full spectrum of relationships that we have. And that healthy relationships is the key indicator for living a happy life. And to me, if we're not talking about relationships and the way we live a happy life and the way that we connect with each other and how all of that is so wrapped up in mental health, we're missing a key part of just what it means to be humans on earth and to connect with each other. And so to me, it's about being human again, almost in a sense, and getting back to the basics of why we're here, what we're doing, and the fact that that's different for everyone. But we've got to talk about it. We've got to explore together. And there's so much uncertainty, and the world is a pretty terrifying place. And if we're in it together, and we sink or float together, and so that's kind of what it comes down to for me.
Just to add on, I think for me, one thing that I can add on is recently we've been having, I work with a team of 15 people. Our organization is youth-led. And I realized that we had this pattern of burnouts. And according to organization,
Oh, Amisa, I think you cut out. Just making sure.
Yeah, I couldn't hear the rest of what she said either.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna make sure that Amisa reconnects and we hear her because we won't really want to. So I'm gonna make sure that if anybody in tech can make sure we can reconnect with Amisa. So making sure of that. But while we flow through this, because I want to make sure that fellows have time to ask questions, and hopefully Amisa can come back for this question because I really want to hear her answer for this before I open the floor for the Millenniums fellows. How do you feel that your views on mental health change or are different when it comes from a non-Western lens, or a lens where, Diana, as you said, like being a first-generation immigrant, or even having parents who are immigrants, as me being a third-generation, kind of having that residuals from my grandparents, and what does that mean for survival? Like, do you feel like your parents or family or people around you even understand what mental health really means, or even have the ability or the ability to really care for mental health the way they need to? Because as we know, mental health is not in a vacuum. We all experience sexism, racism, ableism in any kind of way. So if you guys can speak to the intersection of mental health, I'd really love to hear that.
I can get started because this is a topic very near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned, Letters to Strangers is a global organization, and actually the reason I connected with Millennium Fellows is because the former president of our India chapter, Arushi, was a Millennium Fellow herself. But what I've learned from all of this and from my own experience is a lot of the world is now moving towards adopting Western psychiatry. in terms of the mental health field, which is great. But the problem with it is that it comes from a history of medical racism. And what I mean, I can have a very specific example for this. So the DSM, which is a diagnostic manual that is used by mental health professionals to diagnose someone with a mental illness, it has now really become the gold standard for people practicing Western psychology and psychiatry around the world. Yet the problem with it, so in the DSM, there's something called culture-bound syndromes, which are symptoms of mental illness that manifest within really just one culture, basically a non-white culture. And whether or not these things exist is a whole other conversation, but culture-bound syndromes are relegated to just the appendix of this huge book in the most recent edition of the DSM. And in the previous edition, they were not mentioned whatsoever. And so you can imagine that if more people around the world are now seeking to adopt the mental health framework that the West has introduced, but it was introduced really exclusionary to people who are not white, that's not going to help have that conversation about mental health. And, a big part of it is also that when we talk about mental health in the Western framework, there tends to be not that cultural integration, right? And you see in a lot of cultures, because I'm an ethnic minority from, like I said, the poorest province of China, from a very rural village, my background is very patriarchal. And so the fact that I was a female who had a mental illness meant that people were questioning if that's going to affect my marriageability, if that means that it's reflecting badly on my mother because it might have a genetic component, if that means that girl children are worthless, these are all complications that of course can exist in the West, but I think are complicated to another extent when you factor in cultural parts to it that is not usually talked about in Western settings. So.
No, I think that's so powerful. And I think, we know that politics is global, politics is personal, but I feel like a lot of times we can center Western lens and we can center Western countries and not understand the implications of, we can say mental health is extremely important. We can say everyone do this, but what are the implications for someone expressing mental health and expressing that boundary? Do they have the ability to? Do they have the right to? Are they fighting for other rights that they are entangled with mental health? So I think that's an amazing point, Diana, to just kind of cement with us today. So I want to give the floor to some fellows to be able to ask questions. I want to be mindful on time. So if, yes, awesome. Yes, raise your hands, you guys, ask questions. And also, please correct me with pronunciation. I believe that everyone's name is important. Unfortunately, if my Western tongue is not getting your name right, please correct me. I want to know and make sure that I'm pronouncing your name right. So, I want to give the floor to Moon Tan. Please correct me, introduce yourself, where are you from, university. I'm giving the floor to you.
Hi, my name is Muntahatin Nikita. You can just call me Nikita or Moon. And I'm from Bangladesh University of Professionals, which is definitely in Bangladesh. So actually, this panel discussion is a really important thing for me because I myself am someone who wants to work for the purpose of creating awareness for mental health, and coming here and listening to you guys gives me the hope that I can actually follow your path. So basically, my project for the fellowship program is actually creating a platform where people from anywhere can talk about their mental health struggles and can share how they're coping up with it, and also share tips from the experts. Now, I have recently opened a Twitter account just dedicated to my platform, which is called Talk Together. My question to the panel experts here today would be, since I want to transform this simple platform into an organization in the future, what would your suggestion would be for me that I can follow so I can actually create a safe platform for all? Is there anything that I should be aware of? Is there anything that I can do so that I can reach out to more people and encourage them to come and support and also get support from my platform. And there is another question. Well, whenever I talk with my friends or whoever whom I think that are in need of support, I struggle with this. I don't know how to inspire someone to get inspiration or motivation to live again. I've seen people who have almost like given up on everything, and it's kind of like nothing seems to work for them. Whatever suggestion I give them, or even if I keep on listening to them for endless hours, it just feels like they're going on, in circles, and nothing seems to help them. So, is there anything specific I can do to help them? That would be all from me.
I'd like to chime in quickly on the second question, Moon. People will make, I'm not a therapist, so I can't, I have to put an asterisk by this, but people will make changes when they're ready to make change. And by just listening to them say the same things over and over again is not helpful. So I always keep directing them, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? And what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And eventually they'll either start talking about what they're going to do about it, or they'll quit complaining. So, anyway, good luck.
Dr. Culver, I think that's a great note, because I think, pessimism is so easy in our community, or just like in general, as being a young adult or teenager, you're just like angst about everything. And I think being able to like you said, advocating for people and young adults to be like, okay, so what are we going to do? So how are we going to push through? And I think your organizations, the nonprofit organizations we've talked about today, and Letter to Strangers, is just showing what it looks like to do something and to actually like be the catalyst there. So I think that's an amazing point. Elijah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. No. Please.
I just wanted to let other people speak first, because I had just answered before. But okay, how do I say this succinctly? So firstly, in regards to your first question, I think a big question to ask yourself first is, what niche are you filling? Because there is an increasing number of digital resources and support groups for mental health. So to ask people to be vulnerable and share their stories can be a big ask. And so the question is, what are you providing that is unique and helpful to them, that is going to, make it worth it to bear that reliving of perhaps trauma and such in their sharing of their stories? And part of that comes in recognizing that most of us are not good at listening and supporting people. I'm not saying this as a jab on people in general. It's just how we are. I used to work as a crisis counselor for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And through it, I learned a lot about what it really means to listen. And I think this also ties into your second question, but firstly, that whenever there is a model of support involved, it's important to remember that when we're not approaching it from a framework of, oh, let me just help this person who is clearly too lost to help themselves, but rather, let me walk alongside this person because I am not better than them. And I don't know better than them because I am not them. I don't know their whole journeys. So having those support guidelines and that knowledge in place is very important, or else it could actually be detrimental instead. But to quickly touch upon your second question, a big thing is to sort of remember again that our role is not to be the knight in shining armor. So you might not be able to inspire them or solve their problems for them, and that's okay. That's not your job. At the end of the day, I think a lot of people who are struggling feel like they are at a loss of control in their life, like they're losing their autonomy and individuality. And so rather than treating them as a problem, which furthers this self-image they're developing of themselves as someone that's not like really worth spending more energy on, remind them of their humanity, see them as the person that they were before all of this, and just let them know that there is someone who knows how they can be and is there to join them on their journey as they lead that navigation to where they want to go.
That's an amazing point of just like the humanity of like us having conversations and making sure that we see each other's humanity is so amazing and so important. Just making sure I'm saying, make sure to correct me, Elijah Simon, if you want to ask. Elijah.
All right, good evening. Sorry, I'm on transit, but then this topic is just close to my heart. I'm Elijah Simon Rumbucha from University of Maiduguri here in Nigeria. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Yes. Why I love mental health and everything concerning it is that one time I was delegated to be to represent my my own community in the Federal Capital Territory about mental health and inclusiveness of those people living with disability. So what I did was even for MCN, I submitted a project, Health for All, which includes those persons with special needs, with the topic titled Mental Health and Identity Crisis for People with Special Needs. But then I included students, secondary school students, that's both the students in school and the student in the university, to create awareness about mental health and identity crisis. To me, this is so dear to my heart, and I just love talking to young minds about mental health and identity crisis, because we are here in the northern part of Nigeria where we have crisis of the insurgents, day-to-day activities, bomb blasts, gunshots here and there, and it has made and caused students not to perform well in their exams, parents being disturbed about the well-being of their children in school, and so many issues around individuals not going out to their working place, not going out to school because of fear of death, and so many things around. So my question is, just yesterday I was at a school for the blind, deaf, and dumb to create awareness about mental health and identity crisis, to encourage them and how to so that the state government can include those deaf individuals, because they are young, those deaf, dumb, and then the blind, in policy making, and then inclusiveness in some decisions that will be taken in the state. So my question is, what more can I do to create more awareness about mental health within my community, and then to also include the government, so that awareness can be created more in the state, and also to those people living with disabilities.
Okay, I guess I can start then. I just don't want to talk first again. Sorry, but thank you for your question. Okay. So first thing is, I think the key to being I would say responsible advocate for our communities is to make sure that you are well educated. And so what I mean is, mental health is becoming a topic that more and more people are becoming aware of, which is great. But a lot of times that awareness comes in the form of reposting things on social media that are not necessarily based in education, or at least expanded education. So it might perpetuate existing stereotypes and just false information in general. And we see a lot of videos now, especially on social media, where they'll be like, oh, if you're this, this, and this, then you must have ADHD or something like that. And it's not helpful to have self-diagnoses without having a professional being aware of like your whole history. And it also adds to stigma for other more severe mental illnesses that people are now more putting into that stigmatized role because they're perpetuating these stereotypes. Again, that's not the intention of most people, I'm sure, but it's what happens when we raise awareness without educating ourselves first. So that's why it's really important to learn more about psychology, to learn about the intricacies of mental health and how that can affect people in different areas. And when it comes to working with the government, a key thing, and working with any partner, a key thing is to first have something to show. So start something small, but like impactful based on what the community has said they need. First, have those statistics and results as a case study, and then use that as an example to show stakeholders why you are worth them investing in, because you've already done this before and shown that you can do it. And if you just want a quick education tool, definitely, well, it's not quick, but it's free. The Ledger to Strangers guidebook that I mentioned before has a lot of information.
I can just add to what Diana has said when it comes to mental health, especially at the community level. One thing that I've done it from personal experience engaging with people who are differently abled is actually learning what their needs are. So instead of us coming and imposing what we think they need, maybe they don't need more awareness, maybe they need something else, maybe they need to be educated as a co-education, maybe they need other different mental health and psychosocial support. So one thing that I will advise you to do is actually to really understand, even if it will mean that you have to do a baseline survey or whatever, just to get a grip on understanding that do these people that I really want to work with, is this their primarily need? So instead of just saying that I want to create awareness to this particular target audience, do they really need it? That is the first question. And after they've needed, after now you've confirmed that they need, let's say, mental health awareness, how can you be able to involve them? Because most of the time we feel like we need to tell other people's stories or speak for them. But a good advice is that even us, that with Nivisha Foundation, what we do in Kenya is we don't go to, let's say, the deaf people when we are having session with them and start engaging with them. We have to get somebody from their own community who has already built a rapport understanding with them and who is trusted. And we work with them so that they act like a barrier, so that we don't come and just impose our knowledge, but we have somebody from them and they feel that they're included and this person is well representing them. So the aspect of representation, making sure that whenever you're working with these people, that they're really, really involved from the onset and not just coming in and just giving them the knowledge, so that they can even own the program itself even when you come away from it, which is the essence of you working with the community, not forever going on with it, but actually empowering them to own the program and run with it. So I think that is what I will add to it.
Thank you so much. I think that's super poignant, is to, not insert ourselves. I think Diane also made that point earlier, is making sure that we don't come in here as a savior complex to decide what people need and decide what they should do or how they should do things. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's an amazing point. Okay, so I'm going to do one more question for the interest of time. Jessica, do you no longer have your question? Because you've been here the longest. So I want to be mindful of that. If you no longer have that question, I'll give it to someone else.
Hi, no, yeah, actually, I just put my hand down because we were talking about it more. I had wanted to ask them to expound upon, because it's very difficult to tell sometimes, the difference between the knight in shining armor complex. Am I really helping this person, or, would it be more helpful to let them do it on their own? And in that way, like teach a man to fish and he'll eat for life type of thing. But it's a very fine line. And I just wanted to know, how do you guys navigate that fine line? Like, how do you distinguish between, am I actually helping this person, or am I enabling, or am I, presuming that I'm helping them when really I'm harming them or not allowing them to do it on their own?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and so important. I think a couple of things. I think asking questions and listening first and foremost as much as possible. And kind of like Susanna was saying, and Diana was touching upon this too. And Amisa also, with just, it's kind of like if you're going into a community, you do a community assessment. If you're helping an individual, you figure out what their needs are before assuming things and offering things that may or may not actually be helpful. And then another thing I'd offer, also along the lines of what Susanna shared about how people are not going to change until they're ready. I think it's important to also just protect your own energy. So if there's somebody in your life, especially if you're helping on a personal level, I think professionally, maybe it's easier to have boundaries, although it can also be really hard because we're in a, it's about caring about people and you can get really invested. But to say like, okay, I'm going to schedule times when I am going to make myself available to this person. And then when the time is up, I have to go. and finding people in your life too who give you energy and who match where you're at and the initiative that you're taking as well, to make sure you have a balance, because it can be really frustrating to work over and over again with somebody who's just not putting it feels like they're not putting effort into changes that you're like, I know you should be making this change, and to just take a step back and connect with some other folks, refill your cup, and then come back at it again and mostly listen and ask questions. And people will hopefully eventually come to conclusions for themselves, and they'll ask you for what they need, as long as they feel comfortable sharing with you and that it's safe. You're a safe person to share with.
I think it's really an interesting exercise to work with people who are struggling and to always be assessing, like, where am I in this conversation and relationship? And there have been times where I've noticed that I seem to care more about the outcome than the other person. And I know that I'm definitely in the wrong space. And so if I'm like over investing, like Ali said, then that's a really good place for my self-work. And I'm always doing self-work. Where am I with this? Why am I feeling this way? What's motivating me to say this or to feel this or to do this? And so I think constantly being a learner about yourself is also a really healthy practice.
Yeah, so this is going to be the last question I can answer before I have to hop off. But I will say, I think a big part of this is, of course, ask them first and foremost, right? Like, hey, has what this been happening, like, been helpful for you? But also recognize that, like, a lot of times our default thing is, whenever someone's going through a tough time, is we say, oh, let me know if you need anything, and we leave it at that, which is not the most helpful thing, because then, especially if they're already struggling a lot, now you've added on like a mental load or like job for them, where they have to like sort through everything and delegate everything and then figure out where your skill sets matches what they are looking for. But then is that too much to ask? And just this whole mental gymnastics. And so then they just end up not asking you for help. We're not saying anything to you about it at all. So what I think is a lot more helpful is coming with some ideas for how you can help them, but not offering it like as like, a prescription, but just letting them know that you've been actively thinking about them, so that they know you are serious and not just being courteous when you say that you are willing to help. So things like, oh, I'm heading to this restaurant. I'm more than happy to bring you back a bowl of noodles. Or I know you've been having some trouble finding like a good therapist lately. How about we look for a list of people together? Or I know you have trouble calling the office to make an appointment. Let's sit together and I'll be here with you as you call them. How does that sound? Offering these things, and they can reject it whenever they need to, but just so that it becomes more clear that you're not just in this conversation so you can give the best advice or so you can, fix their problem, but more so that they know that they have someone who is there to support. And that for me, I think is the biggest point.
Awesome. Amazing. You guys' input is so awesome, so poignant. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Dr. Culver. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Misa. It's amazing. Thank you also to all our Millennium Fellows. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. For people who voiced their questions, people also sent questions anonymously. And of course, we have a time limit. But for our panelists, how can we keep this conversation? How can we connect with your organizations? How can we connect in general? Please give me ways to find you elsewhere.
Well, I put my email address and website in the chat, and I can post it again so you don't have to scroll up. And I know Ali also put our website. And we would love to hear from all of you, and would really invite you to participate in our learning modules. These are about skills, and we offer it on a gift economy. So if you can afford a few dollars, that'd be great. And if you can't, you're welcome as well. And walk people through the skills, like my little dog needs, apparently, to create mental, emotional, and relationship health and wellness. So we really want to help 4 to 5 people before they are really challenged. And thank you, everybody, for attending in this beautiful program. We're so honored to be here.
Mm-hmm. Same here. I think I've also put just the name of my organization, Nivishe Foundation. So you can find us on all social media platforms. That's the spelling Nivishe Foundation, even on the website. And it has also been a great honor being a panelist with Susan and Ali and Diana, even though she has left. So, and I've learned a lot from you and also from the fellows. Continue doing the amazing work that you're doing. We are here to support you.
Yes, making sure to plug Diana. Please go to letterstostrangers.org, look at the website, try to connect as much as possible. And at the beginning of this year, Millennium Fellows were asked to submit some mental health quotes and advice for each other. So the video will be here for the responses right after this. So if you guys can stick along while they play the video, it'll be amazing. And thank you so much to panelists again, Diana, Dr. Calvert, Ali, Misa. Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing experience, and I'm so happy to monitor for you guys. And thank you, fellows.